Excellent. Thank you very much. And many apologies indeed for our late start here due to some issues, unexpected issues with the traffic this morning. But we would like to, with no further ado, I'd like to welcome you here. My name is Simon Gilby. I'm a Sustainable Development Officer at the United Nations Office for Sustainable Development. And we welcome you to our side event here at the SDG Pavilion on tackling methane emissions and the waste crisis through data, evidence-based policy and finance. We look forward this morning to having our speakers with us, particularly His Excellency Mr. Max Adrianina Fontaine, the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development from Madagascar. So as we are already running late, with no further ado, I'd like to invite our Head of Office, Mr. Chung-Kyu Park, to please come forward and give his welcoming remarks. Mr. Park, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Your Excellency, Mr. Max Adrianina Fontaine, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, Madagascar, distinguished guests and participants. I would like to begin by expressing my sincerest gratitude to all the delegates and experts here who have so generously given their valuable time to be with us today. Thanks to our partners, the Green Growth Knowledge Partnership, co-hosted by UNEP, the Global Green Growth Institute, and the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development of Madagascar for co-hosting this event, tackling methane emissions and waste crisis through data evidence-based policy and finance. I would particularly like to thank His Excellency Ms. Max Adrianina Fontaine, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, Madagascar, for so graciously agreeing to deliver our keynote speech. Also, many thanks go to Ms. Martina, head of the Secretary Climate and Clean Air Coalition, UNEP, for delivering, who will come to our event in a minute. And Ms. Aditi over there, Ramola, Technical Director, International Solid Waste Association, ISWA, Ms. Garpred PP will come together, a Senior Program Manager for Solid Waste, Minister of Sanitation and Water Resources of Ghana, and Ms. Amy Lewis, Operations Senior Specialist, Climate Change Division, Inter-American Development Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a time of waste crisis. Our office recently published the book, The Waste Crisis, Accelerating National to Local Policy Action, Evidence-Based Strategies for Sustainable Solutions, shows alarming statistics. 23 billion tons of waste is generated annually, but only 62% is managed in controlled facilities, and 90% of waste in low-income countries that's discarded in unregulated dumps or burned openly. Plastic waste has increased by 126% between 2000 and 2019, and the waste sector contributes to 20% of human-caused methane emissions. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas, and much of its emissions comes from organic waste decomposition in landfills, agricultural practices, and fossil fuel production. Addressing this issue requires multifaceted approach. This side event will examine the interlinkages between climate change and solid waste management with a focus on data and finance to advance evidence-based policy action. The side event will present the new policy support initiative, policy support system on waste management and circularity, which has been developed in cooperation with the UNEP, co-hosted Green Growth Knowledge Platform, GGKP, and in coordination with regional hub countries like Madagascar, Ghana, and some Latin American countries for strengthening waste-related data, national capacity, and policy action. Distinguished guests, Although the waste management situation is severe, we believe that through collaboration, data-driven insights, and strategic planning, meaningful change is within reach. Today's discussion emphasized the urgent need for innovative evidence-based solutions to address methane emissions and the waste crisis, paving the way for a sustainable future. Let's live today inspired and ready to make a difference. Together we can confront the waste crisis and work toward a cleaner, healthier planet for future generations. Thank you for your commitment and participation. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Park, for your welcoming remarks. Unfortunately, there seems to be an issue with Ms. Otto, so without further ado, I would like to please invite His Excellency, Ms. Max Adorina Fontaine, the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development for the Government of Madagascar, to please come and give us his keynote speech. Your Excellency, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. You can hear me? Good morning and welcome to the second week of the COP already. It's a real pleasure to be on this panel with you, Mr. Park, because when I was appointed by the president, UN OSD was amongst the first organization, to approach us for international partnership, international collaboration, in a topic that is so important for Madagascar, because if you don't know, we are almost 30 million people now. Most of the time it surprises people when we say that there are 30 million people in Madagascar, because when you look at the map, you just see a small island somewhere in the Indian Ocean. But this almost 30 million people with a really high demographic rate means that we produce a lot of waste, and we will produce even more waste. And as of today, we don't have the facilities to manage that waste, to value that waste. And the consequences are directly felt by the population. At the day we are talking now, there is a huge smog over the capital because it's hot, it doesn't rain, and there is a mix of the waste smoke, of the bushfires, of the cars, of the charcoal, etc. So when we talk about waste management, it's not only about having clean cities, it's also about health issues. And we are seriously thinking about taking strong measures in case the situation does not improve itself. Madagascar, when we submitted our second indices, on the mitigation part, because like most of the African countries, we really put our priorities on the adaptation. But still, we make a lot of effort on mitigation, because now we have launched the G0 coalition, which is the coalition of the last countries that sequester more carbon than we emit. But we still make many efforts in mitigation. There are two sectors, two key areas where we want to make efforts in terms of mitigation and also methane production. The first one is the waste, and the second one is agriculture. If we only talk about rice, in Madagascar, we eat rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we produce a lot of rice, and with the actual method, with the livestock that is involved in it, it releases a lot of methane. And the second one is the waste, and I've already said the issues about waste management. So we really decided, as the government and the president's vision is really clear on that. If before we saw the waste as a burden, as something that we cannot control, today we can consider it as a new gold of the 21st century. There are models now that have been proved to be efficient. You can create jobs with the waste, you can generate energy by transforming the methane, and the government of Madagascar invested for the first time in waste management center that we are managing in partnership with the private sector, but that has been 100% financed by the government of Madagascar. Just to tell you how it's only the beginning, but we take strong measures, and you cannot ask for international help if you don't help yourself first. You need to invest also the domestic resources before asking partners to come to help you. Then, for us, it's such an important topic that when we have met the UNOSD team first time, we told them that we were really honored and to be considered as a potential regional hub, you know. And our team have been to your office in Seoul. You came to Madagascar, your team met. We met in many places all around the world. And now it's official that Madagascar will be the regional hub. So it's a big pride for us. And we'll make sure, you know, to build on that, to make sure that we create way more associations, organizations, private sector, startups around this waste management, also at the scale level, and that we can strengthen partnerships with countries for ITMOs or for transactions to make sure that we have sustainable funding mechanisms to finance all of these efforts. So thank you very much for believing in us. Thank you for the partnership, and really looking forward to hear the panelists and to hear the really interesting insight from everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Now we would like to invite the speakers to come forward. So, Mr. Park, Your Excellency, and Ms. Aditi Ramola, and Ms. Amy Lewis to please come forward, and we'll take a quick group photograph. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those warm words. And we are, of course, also greatly honoured to UNOSD to be working with Madagascar, and deeply appreciate their strong support for the waste policy support system, and their very generous agreement to be a regional hub for East Africa. So now we are going to launch the waste policy support platform and publication. And if I could please bring up my presentation slides. So just one moment, please, whilst we bring up the slides. Okay, wonderful. I don't have a clicker, so I'll just ask for the next slide. So, yes, the waste crisis, as His Excellency and Mr. Park have outlined, is a one that has always, in many respects, always been with us, but has become particularly acute in recent years. In recent years, of course, we've seen tremendous economic growth across the world that has alleviated poverty. But that economic growth comes with increasing material use, and with increasing material use becomes increasing waste. Our economic model is a linear model, which moves from the use of resource and then the simple disposal, and this leads to a huge strain on the environment. We have 2.3 billion tons estimated, though the data is very difficult to verify, but around 2.3 billion tons but we can see that only 62% is actually managed, and then a very large percentage when we come to low-income countries is not being controlled. We see plastics and e-waste increasing substantially, the doubling of the GHG emissions related to waste in the last 50 years. And as the minister rightly pointed out, the waste sector contributes an enormous amount to methane emissions. Next slide, please. So, regarding the SDGs, we do not. The waste stretches across a number of the SDGs that we can see there. So it sits in with cities, of course, a major urban issue, with sustainable consumption and production, and with a life below water has specific targets. Nevertheless, next slide, please. Waste impacts all of the sustainable development goals. It impacts on poverty due to the informal sector, that is, and the many jobs that are involved with waste, across gender equality, education, and also impacting water with the plastics issue, with climate, with waste. Next slide, please. Well, one of the most difficult ones is making it clear and understanding clearly at the global level the data. Many countries lack data, or where they have the data, it is very fragmented. It's sitting in cities. It's out of date. So keeping a track of this is very difficult. Next slide. And as we can see from this slide, the countries that are able to report at the global level to our colleagues in UN statistics, it is mainly the higher income countries. Simply understanding the numbers in lower income countries is a tremendous an ongoing problem that we'll discuss later. Next slide. So we have seen that the waste management data, accurate data, we cannot plan without good data, but the data, for example, in low-income countries has an average age of 15 years out of date. And obviously with the incredible expansion of economic growth that we have seen over the last 15, 20 years, although obviously we have economic difficulties from the pandemic and from the war in Ukraine, we still have these issues of not understanding where we have the data of where it is from. So next slide, please. Okay, so what is the purpose of the policy support system that we're launching here today? Well, the idea of the policy support system is to give countries a tool where they can self-assess their national progress on waste. So this is a lengthy and complex questionnaire, and it's important to understand that this is a tool, and of course with any tool, its use is it doesn't stand alone. It needs to be, of course, properly integrated into the process of waste management in a country. So what we're looking at here, how this fits in is to help countries understand where they are and what are the main issues. What are the key issues? We have finance, monitoring, status, which is measuring the current status of the data, capacity, public governance, and engagement. These are the 6 key areas which we have identified. And then across these 6 areas, how from generation to segregation to collection to sorting to treatment and disposal across the waste life cycle, where are the key areas? And then from this, filling out this questionnaire, from this data, we can understand where are the key pain points, where are the issues that need the identification. So due to time constraints, I'm not going to show you the website, but I'll show you some slides. Next slide, please. So this is our website, and could you next slide, please? And as you can see, what it is a comprehensive questionnaire that has been developed in tandem with a group of experts, not only at UNOSD, but we've had tremendous support and are working in partnership with the Green Growth Knowledge Platform, which is hosted by UNEP and in partnership with the Global Green Growth Institute and the Ministry of Environment, Korea, to whom we are very thankful for their strong support to help develop. So what are our next steps? Well, our next steps are next slide, please. Is next year we'll be holding regional workshops in East Africa, West Africa, and Latin America and the Caribbean. We are finalizing the dates, and we are again once more very thankful for Madagascar for their very generous offer to host the workshop, and we will be looking forward to using these workshops as a platform for countries to have peer-to-peer exchanges and also to further develop the workshop. So any countries from globally are very welcome, but particularly from those regions, as that's where we'll be this year. Please contact us for further details. And next slide. Also, our report that I've been taking the data on, the waste crisis. We have our publication, the QR codes for the main publication and the summary for policymakers. It's been very popular. We have brought some copies you might be able to find down at the front, but they were vanishing quickly when I last saw them. But yeah, please go. But also we have online and also a summary. So that's the conclusion of my comments. Thank you very much. And now I'll be bringing forward our panelists. I'd like to invite Ms. Aditi Ramola, the Director for the International Solid Waste Association. Please come forward and take a seat. Thank you. Also, Mr. Godfred Fifi Buodi, the Senior Program Manager for Solid Waste, Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, Ghana, and Ms. Amy Lewis, the Operations Senior Specialist, Climate Change Division, Inter-American Development Bank. So a round of applause, please, for our panelists. Thank you. And I will now join them on the stage for our panel discussion. Okay, thank you very much to our panelists, and I would just like to start just giving a brief moment for our panelists just to introduce themselves and give a very brief overview of the work that you're doing in waste management, particularly methane data and finance. So I'd like to start first with Aditi. Yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
This is a new one. I like this because the last time at COP we could hear all the panels simultaneously. So this is great. Thank you for having me, Simon. It's really wonderful to be here, Mr. Park, again. So I'm from the International Solid Waste Association. It's a global NGO that's headquartered in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and we've been around for more than 50 years now. We were founded in 1970 as an association of industry representatives, as well as academics, as well as individuals, and a lot of institutions that are working on waste and resource management globally. For the past 10 years, we've also been focusing on a circular economy because we believe a bedrock of a good circular economy is a solid waste management system. We work with country governments, but municipalities mainly also, to advise them on their waste management systems. And we have partnerships with a lot of UN organizations such as the UN Environment Program, UN Habitat, and so on for different kinds of projects that we carry out. So this is just a brief introduction, and you'll hear more through the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aditi. And Fifi, if I could just ask you just to give us a little bit, a very brief overview of the situation in Ghana concerning solid waste, and particularly also issues around, very briefly, around methane and finance. Thank you.
All right, so thank you. Good morning. Good to be here. And so my name is Fifi Bwedi. I'm from the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources. The Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources is actually quite a new ministry in Ghana. It was created just in the year 2017 based on the government's priorities and focus to highlight the issues of waste management and sanitation in Ghana. As far as I'm also the senior programs manager for the solid waste management and circular economy at the ministry. And as far as solid waste management is concerned in Ghana, so we generate around 7.12 million metric tons annually in Ghana. And from our 2021 population and housing census, we estimate that about 1.6 million metric tons of waste is burned annually, which actually draws the attention to the broken waste management services somewhat in some parts of the country. And this could be seen from previously going around and giving contracts to formal service providers. Over time, we realized that because the economy is largely informal, using the formal approach doesn't necessarily work. And this has actually resulted in a lot of informal waste service providers. The proliferation of informal waste service providers in the country. And so this brings us to the point where we need to now have a second look at our approach over time, and then how to also redesign and remodel our waste management and services in Ghana. And so this will be just the introduction for now. I'm sure we'll delve in much more deeper subsequently.
Thank you very much, Fifi. And also just to say, Ghana is our other hub in Africa, in West Africa. So we are, of course, very grateful and honoured that you are work also alongside Madagascar, working with us in Africa on this critical issue. So, yeah, thank you. And without any further ado, Amy, if you'd like to give a brief overview. Amy is from the Inter-America Development Bank, so perhaps can give a little bit of view from Latin America.
Certainly. So my name's Amy Lewis. I'm a senior operations specialist in the IDB's climate change division. So maybe a couple of words about the IDB for folks who might not know. We're the main source of financing for development in Latin America and the Caribbean. We provide both financial and technical support in the region, and really our goal is to improve lives. So our support is cross-sector. So I said I come from the climate change division. We have a small delegation this year. I hope I can do justice to the initiatives that my colleagues in the water and sanitation division have asked me to share with you today. But yeah, our new institutional strategy has outlined three main goals for the organization. That's to reduce poverty and inequality, to foster sustainable growth, and also to combat climate change. And that last one we're really excited about because it's newly integrated as a core objective for us.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Thank you very much. And what I'd like to do is, before we have our discussion, often the audience doesn't ever have an opportunity to ask questions. So before then, having had the introduction, I'm happy to take one or two questions from the floor, if anyone has anything they'd like to ask. No? Okay, then you had your opportunity. So if you want to, of course, speak to our panelists afterwards, then I'm sure they'd be happy to speak to you as well. Okay, so thank you very much to everybody for your brief overview of the work that you're doing. And I would like to now, dig a little deeper into first talking about data collection, particularly, I think that there's really many issues around data due to obviously the fact that often it is local governments, for example, that often are the main people who are responsible for data for waste management, and therefore you have often in a country a very fractured view, and it's very difficult. And also, so just measuring the sheer volume is one challenge. But of course, greenhouse gas emissions, particularly methane, are of increasing concern. Methane being a very powerful greenhouse gas and a short-lived climate pollution. So, I mean, how do we enhance then, our data collection, particularly, looking at the challenge of methane emissions data collection, and particularly, when we're looking at developing countries with limited resources, such as in sub-Saharan Africa or Latin America. So, Amy, I was wondering if I could throw that question at you first.
So, sure. At the IDB, we manage a platform, the Solid Waste and Circular Economy Hub. And really what we're doing through that hub is consolidating information on solid waste management and linking it back to the circular economy, the SDGs, and to climate change. So we see this hub as an essential tool for the digital transformation of the sector, one that can really strengthen a government's capacity to generate and improve their monitoring and data systems. So through this hub, we are fostering accountability and also the design of more effective solutions. So let me give a few points as to how that works. So first, the reporting application that we've developed will enhance data collection and transparency, and it enables national statistics offices and sectoral entities to report on these key indicators, including waste collection coverage, disposal methods, and material recovery rates. But it also supports some economic and social metrics, things like management costs and workforce composition by gender, so bringing in some of the other elements of development. And what this ultimately can do is help us to identify data quality gaps or data gaps altogether, not just from quality. And hopefully we can start closing those data gaps then by targeting technical assistance and strengthening the systems that surround them. Second, we think that by consolidating and harmonizing the data, the hub can really help us to sort of promote regional integration and perhaps the replication of best practices in the region. Third, the hub is leveraging AI tools, and through those AI tools, we can analyze the waste flows, identify high priority areas, particularly open dump sites that are emitting significant amounts of methane. We can also assess gaps in the actual infrastructure that's there. And all of that provides us with a robust foundation for providing financial assistance toward increasing and improving the infrastructure that's in place. And finally, the hub facilitates also coordination with donors, so bringing in other partners who can provide resources and really, continue to share those best practices from around the world. So really what we hope is that through this data-driven insights, we can use the hub to help tailor solutions to the region and, hopefully also be fostering accountability and evidence-based policy making. And hopefully all of that can help us accelerate the progress toward the circular economy.
Oh, thank you very much, Amy. And it's wonderful to hear about the hub that is being set up in Latin America and how that's going to facilitate improved data. So it's also it's been it also shows, I think, how we can also work together as international partners, because you have the data collection aspect, but our tool is looking at the particularly kind of policy or capacity aspects. And so I think they can be very much complementary. One is looking more at process, and the other looking at data and how they can be combined. So yeah, thank you very much. I'd also like to kind of keep at the international perspective at the moment, and perhaps go over to Iswa and ask a little bit about also what your thoughts are on data collection and transparency issues.
Thank you. So just recently, we've launched the Global Waste Management Outlook 2024 with UNEP, and the first thing that we saw was that data was severely lacking. As you showed on your slide, UNSD, the Statistics Office, collects data from waste generation from countries every year, and I think I saw 23 countries are reporting in a good manner right now. So that's 150 countries less need. It's going on. Right? Can you hear me now? Is it better? No? Is this better? Yes. And so at ISWA, we realized that very, very starkly. And what we've noticed from our projects that we're doing on the ground in India and Indonesia is that, as you mentioned, it's the local governments that have to report nationally, and then the national government reports to whoever is asking for the data. In the rural areas, we find it's much, much more of a challenge. So if it's a city that's semi-urban or urban, they're able to manage. They have good technical departments that can, feed that data. They have good collection systems going on. But the rural areas is where it's lacking. But what we've also seen is the leakage of waste into environment is also the most in the rural areas. So when it comes to methane emissions, specifically, we're designing programs where they can actually start diverting that good resource into other use, whether it's through composting, through pilot projects like black soldier fly or black soldier fly larvae, or even small anaerobic digesters like biogas and so on. So that's very specifically on the methane focus. But when we go into a place, before designing the system, as Amy mentioned, you need to have projects that you can actually make them bankable for investors to come in. And for investors to come in, you always need that good data. So we always start with a baseline data collection exercise. And here we've partnered with UN Habitat's tool, because 11.6.1, the SDG indicator, has told countries to use the UN Habitat Waste Wise Cities tool, and so that's what we've been using. I would love to look at what you've also developed at IEDB, and we start there. We do a greenhouse gas emissions analysis as well, and then design the waste master plan for that region that we're looking at the data from. So that's how we're doing this around different countries currently.
Thank you very much. And yes, it's interesting to hear, of course, that with waste collection and waste management, the situation, as you say, in the rural areas and the urban areas is very, very different, and obviously and need very much different approaches. It's also, I think, worth noting that that slide I showed maybe in some respects maybe a little bit unfair, because we know that the data is out there. It's just often, it's sitting somewhere on a local government's Excel spreadsheet somewhere, or in different parts, and just simply not reported to the national level, and therefore doesn't go further. But yes, without having that full overview, it's I think it's very of course it's very, very challenging to make plans. So Fifi, I'd like to now turn to the national government level, and particularly your experiences in Ghana, and ask you kind of two things here. I think one is about the data collection and what challenges you're facing and how you go about this, but also how are you managing the problem of planning in an environment with data that perhaps is lacking or there's a high uncertainty on.
The challenge is very real. And so maybe just to paint a picture, we have 261 municipalities in Ghana. What this means is that you need to work with 261 municipalities to be able to make this complex data available. And so that is the first challenge. What we have been able to do also as a country is to be able to embed some of these data requirements in our ongoing surveys and censuses. And so for the first time in 2021, when we did our population housing census, we were able to also improve on questionnaires to be able to get some sector-specific data on waste management. And that is how come we are able to now identify the different disposal means and how waste is stored and which storage method and which pathways this waste are more or less given off from the household level, and then the institutional level, and then at the various settings level. So that is one that we've realized that you could easily deploy low cost tech options to do. But the real challenge is with the methane emissions monitoring and measurement. And so that is where the real cost is. Because whether you want to do satellite monitoring or you want to do on-site infrastructure at, for instance, landfill sites, that is costly. That cannot be done for this number of municipalities. And so that is where we are having to struggle with. The third part of this discussion is the approach we used in developing our nationally determined contributions. Previously, the existing nationally determined contributions that we have wasn't participatory enough. And so we at the national office just worked with the Ministry of Environment and EPA in terms of coming up with the programs of actions that are necessary for the sector. But we realized that coming back to the MRV, these municipalities do not feel part of those programs of actions that were adopted in the NDCs. And so they do not see the need to make this, to follow these reporting channels. And sometimes you need to get them to also own it so that they can also be part of the process. And so this time around, what we have decided and which we have started is to change the approach. And the approach this time is working with the stakeholders bottom up. And so we've made it more participatory. So far, we've organized 2 separate workshops where we've brought all these actors across the service chain to be able to articulate what they are doing and how that feeds into the programs of actions that will be, determining for which will be adopted in the NDCs. By so doing, after coming up with the programs of actions, specifically on methane, for instance, then we are now able to go back to them and design clear reporting templates where they are able to report periodically on these key issues. And so these are broadly the areas that we have seen some challenges. Let me just conclude by saying that the aspect of capacity building is also crucial, because for many developing countries like Ghana, we are doing tier 1 reporting. We aim to move to tier 2 and then maybe finally tier 3. But then this requires a lot of investment and capacity as well, because now we are using default values for our inventory reporting. We want to move away from there. And we have the projects on the ground that with some guidance and then also some benchmarking, we are able to come up with country-specific data and activity data to be able to improve on our reporting as well. And so these are things that we cannot do as a country on its own. These are things that we'll have to look at doing possibly at the regional level and then maybe at different levels where we are able to share common methodologies in reaching some of these values as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and some very interesting comments there, and a very complete answer. But yes, I was particularly struck, as you said, methane emissions are very, very challenging to measure, although there is hope, I think, there's a lot of talk about AI and satellite imagery, and of course there's a lot of perhaps hype around that. But that technology, I think, is starting to become more and more on stream, and I think potentially in the next 5 to 10 years we might see a situation where that can make a very meaningful difference. But yes, thank you very much for those comments. I know that I'd just like to perhaps finish our panel discussion with maybe one more question, because we haven't really touched on finance. And I think that obviously we are obviously, as Fifi just touched on that there's issues around obviously the financing of the infrastructure itself for the collection and the management, but also people often overlook the finance needed for collecting the data, so you understand what's going on. But I was just, what innovative, financing models or opportunities for funding waste management, either for the infrastructure or the GHG inventories that we're seeing in developing countries. I don't know if Aditi, would you like to?
Okay, I can.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I just want to go back to what Fifi said. He talked about ownership a lot. The thing is, waste management, when you look at it from a systemic perspective, it's much easier to understand the flows and so on. But ultimately, it's always the waste generator that has to put it into the right bin. And when we talk about segregation programs and so on, if the ownership of a plan that suppose the government of Ghana has made, the ownership is not there, it's not going to really work, right? So that's why you're starting this participatory approach, you're trying to go bottom up and so on. And that's where even the innovative finance comes in. Actually, I might not even call it innovative. We're just even looking at, because what Sir from Madagascar said, His Excellency said, that if you're not helping yourself first, you can't expect flows of finance to come in. And so when we design our programs, when we design our waste management plan, for instance, we are looking at affordability issues as well. What that means is we're trying to give a system in place that can be actually afforded by the citizens of the place there. Instead of giving like a copy-paste solution from somewhere else, looking at what the local solution is, what is the GDP, how much can they actually afford, what kind of technology will go in. And so it's not an innovative financing mechanism, but it's about trying to set in fees to at least have the basic infrastructure in place, collection systems, maybe like a storage somewhere for a secondary collection for materials, maybe a material recovery facility and so on, and then moving up the ladder from there. So that's one. But we're also seeing in places where nothing exists, no infrastructure exists, these innovative things like plastic credits are coming in or carbon credits are coming in. So people are looking at that more and more. But that quickly moves away because once your system is in place, then you can't access that anymore. So those are some of the things we're looking at. And then with Article 6, I think you were in the panel last week, Article 6.2, which is the new Sustainable Development Mechanism, it's also looking at how countries can exchange credits and how they can actually bring in finance for perhaps waste systems as well, not only other sectors. But that was just half an answer. I'm going to give it to Amy for the rest of it.
Yeah, that's one of the hazards of having bank in your name. People expect you to come with the money. What I can say is that at the IDB, the IDB and IDB Invest, which is our private sector arm, combined last year in 2023 had $7.1 billion worth of financial support for the climate agenda. I wish I had the specifics on solid waste and where the money went. But if you check out the joint MDB report, you can find the slice and dice on how much we were dedicating specifically to this agenda. The other thing I would highlight is increasingly, particularly not just for resilience, also for mitigation, the MDBs are increasingly turning to the results that we're achieving from the finance. And in that way, we feel that we can continue to prioritize those interventions that will have the most impact. So one of the things we've developed and launched this week, or I guess last week now, we're on week 2, is a joint approach to measuring climate action and the results that we're getting out of that. So I'd encourage everyone to also take a look at our metrics on solid waste.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to give the last word to Fifi.
Yeah, so we look at it in brackets. The CAPEX aspect and then the OPEX. What we have decided as a country to do is to be able to raise adequate resources to be able to support the capital expenditure. One way we've been able to do this is to be able to have a levy on fossil fuels. And so every liter of petrol or diesel that you buy in Ghana, there is 10 pesos levy on it. This 10 pesos goes into a dedicated account, and we call it the Sanitation and Pollution Levy. This Sanitation and Pollution Levy has become the vehicle for us to be able to fund and support capital investments in the waste management sector. Ever since we were able to do this, we've realized that waste management infrastructure has increased tremendously. And so now the government commissioned 16 integrated recycling compost plants across the country in 2021. If you look at, commissioning 16 integrated recycling compost plants, the government on its own cannot be funding 16 different projects across the country. And so what we've done is that we've partnered with the private sector, because then they are able to bring in the revenue, and then government is able to guarantee the investment by de-risking their investment. And so we are able to, over time, and which the current arrangement is 15 years, pay off the capital investment. Now, the other issue is left with the operational expenditure. And that is where financial instruments like Article 6.2 and maybe the 6.4, gradually helps countries or projects in these countries to become worthwhile. And so for us in Ghana, we've been able to bring 6 of these integrated recycling compost plants under the ITMOS arrangement, which has been signed between Ghana and the government of Switzerland. We just signed another one with the government of Singapore and Sweden, and then I think currently we are working with South Korea to finalize that arrangement as well. And so this affords us some leverage to be able to make these projects worthwhile, and beyond the capital expenditure aspect, to be able to, the fundamental issue is that the polluters are not paying. The polluters are not paying. And to be able to get to full cost recovery, you cannot fold your arms. And so something must be done. And gradually, as something is being done, you look at also optimizing how to get polluters to pay, find innovative ways of getting polluters to pay, and then be able to move gradually towards full cost recovery. And so this is what basically we've been doing in Ghana as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Fifi, and very interesting to see that I think maybe a lot of people who are not familiar with the field don't understand there's that link to also climate finance that can be within waste management, and the many opportunities there. Okay, so thank you very much to our panelists. I'd like to bring the panel discussion to a close. And just to say a round of applause, please, for our panelists. And many thanks to all of them, and also to His Excellency the Minister for joining us. So I hope that everyone here is, I think it's been a very good discussion and presentations, and to see the opportunities for solving the waste crisis. Thank you very much.